the Warriors and so the Warriors haven't won. I hate to bring it up. The Warriors haven't won a premiership, right? And that there's that inevitability that it's like it's going to happen eventually. It will happen. Like the Warriors will win a premiership, and they might win a few in a row. Like you get the vibe that the Warriors will have that. And I sort of had that sense that the Dragons would do that, particularly around the early 2000s and then going into 2010.
Hey team, welcome back into the Warriorholic. Got another special guest this week, Mr. Nathan Brookes, aka Brookesy. Welcome on the show, my man.
Holic, thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to this. When you reached out, I was like, you know what, we could go down some rabbit holes here with the Warriors and the Dragons and NRL and SEN and everything. So I'm looking forward to the chat, mate, and seeing where you take me.
I tell you, mate, it seems like we've been chatting for bloody ages via SEN. But for those people probably viewing in New Zealand who may not know who Brookesy is, he's currently the producer on the Drive show with Joel and Fletch on SEN, which you can access by the SEN app there. Pretty much all NRL focused there, and we know what Fletch is like on Fletch and Hindy. We get a bit of that every day in the afternoons there. And he's also got a bit of a history over there in the Fox TV sport aspect of things, so we might go down a couple of holes with that of how it's been over the years. So look forward to having a chat. I'll put a couple of links to his socials in the bio at the end here. But game on. Welcome aboard. Look, we could go on about that all day, I think. But let's take a bit of a switch back to the footy, because I'm assuming most of my followers don't follow for my pretty looks. They probably follow for a bit of footy content. So you mentioned you're an Illawarra Steelers fan there. Some of the young people probably won't even know who they are. But yeah, they definitely bring back some memories of me. The likes of, what's his name? Yeah, we had the halfback there. It came over.
John Simon,
guys like that pop into your mind. I'm curious though, like when they decided they had to merge with St George, how did you take that, and how long did it take for you to kind of actually feel like the Dragons were your club, or do they actually feel like they're your club?
Yeah, the merger was tough. Like I was 17 or 16, 17 at the time. I remember 1998. There was chat about, we've just come out of Super League, the Super League war, and you knew that there was going to be teams. It was sort of a provision that, for these two competitions to get together, there's going to have to be some teams fall by the wayside or teams merge. Well, I believe there would have been like 22 teams with the creation of like Adelaide and Hunter Mariners around that Super League time that were there in 1998. And the Melbourne Storm were created, and you were sort of like, oh, surely they'd keep a team in the Illawarra, in Wollongong. It's a one-team town. You've got so many in Sydney already. You want to make this a national rugby league. You've got to have a team there. You've got to have Newcastle. You've got to have Canberra. You've got to have those Gold Coast and Townsville, North Queensland. You've got to have them. They've got to be staple, surely. Auckland, you've got to have them. And then it was like the finances started kicking in, and you knew the writing was on the wall, and it was really tough because, growing up, and it too, Holic, sport is so good in a sense that there can be good times and there could be bad times in your life, but sport can be something that can get you through them. Like it might be, you're struggling at school, or there's a lot like divorce, for instance. Like your kid, you're just going through all these different things growing up, uncertainty about who you are, and I was just like, man, this team, even though they sucked, it was something that I just looked forward to every year, and bought the jerseys, met the players, as I mentioned earlier, and, getting the cards, and just memories as a kid where you just go, fuck, this team's not going to exist anymore, and they're going to be branded something else. And for Illawarra fans in that merger, it was like, we've got the name down the bottom of the badge, we've got the socks, we've got some of the players, but this isn't like anything that we had last year. Like the colours were the same, the red and white and the white and the red V, and it was disappointing, and it took some time, and it's funny what winning can do. And at the back end of '99, it was like, oh, I can get around this team, and Trent Barrett, who was an amazing talent, like those 2 years at Illawarra, like his debut season was amazing in '97. Like that was, he was unbelievable, and I remember like the back end of that finals run, I went to the Cronulla prelim where Nathan Blacklock and Mundine were doing the flips and at Stadium Australia, and we're in a grand final. How good's this? Like it's like we. So I think that back into that year, it sort of all those feelings that sort of had at the start that this isn't really my team, I'm not really getting around, it sort of went by the wayside. And
I couldn't imagine if you tried to merge the Warriors with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Fuck, if we had an Australian team. I just couldn't imagine it. But I guess winning a final, would probably get you back on board. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as you're talking, I'm sitting here thinking about the players. Like Brad Mackay, did he start out with you guys? He was
St George, then he went to Western Reds, and then he came back to the Steelers, and then I think he played 1 year in the merger, 99, maybe two.
Because I can only remember him in the Red V, but then I was looking through the list of the players here, thinking about, because I hadn't thought about bloody Illawarra for so long, so, like Rod Wishart, I didn't realise he was as well. He's an awesome player. What's his name there? Paul McGregor. Yeah, there's some randoms there, but we never really had any Kiwis playing for you guys. So I think that's one of the reasons. Like we had Brendan Tuta played for, and Jared McCracken played for West, so we had a little bit of a connection there. But it's I don't know. It must have been a really weird ride, because since '95, obviously, I've been dealing with the stress of the Warriors going up and down, and never really had the success. And I was over in Japan, like back in the day, I'd have to get Mum to send the games on VHS every week. That's how I was keeping up with it. So I didn't have that kind of connection you were having with your mates and being able to meet all the players and with shit. And I just don't know how I managed to stick with it. So it's kind of nice to hear those stories of, where you weren't a great team, but you stick with it. Then you get this merger. But how have you felt over the past couple of years? Because it hasn't been a great time. And you've been through about 4 coaches, almost as many as the Warriors over the past 5 years. Has that been a tough ride to stick with it?
It has, but it's like you saw the bad thing. I don't know. The Warriors and the Warriors haven't won. I hate to bring it up. The Warriors haven't won a premiership, right? And that there's that inevitability that it's like it's going to happen eventually. It will happen. Like the Warriors will win a premiership, and they might win a few in a row. Like you get the vibe that the Warriors will have that, and I sort of had that sense that the Dragons would do that, particularly around the early 2000s and then going into 2010. Like they had this awesome era. They should have won more premierships. And, like watching the league and being more, I guess, I'm not as passionate now that I've sort of worked in the industry, and I sort of like getting, like there's teams that I used to hate. I used to hate Manly because all of my mates were Manly fans. I've got around them quite a bit recently, which sort of the old me would have really hated me saying that. The Melbourne Storm, like the Spies of '99, all the premierships. But then you look back and you just go, there's so much talent. Even Queensland, like in Origin, like Blues through and through. It's
called getting old, mate. It's called getting old.
Yeah, it's just like you respect success. Like I'm a mad basketball fan, mad Jordan fan. Never really got around LeBron, not really a fan of him. Like, I sort of see through a few of the things that he does, but you got to respect what he's achieved. Like, it's amazing what he has achieved. Like, the way he's won, he's done so much, like, on and off the court, in an era that was different to what Jordan went through, where you're under the microscope so hard off the court. You've got politics coming into stuff. So, anyway, back to what you were saying about the Dragons. It's like you sort of get this sense that, this might be the time that they needed. they need to sort of go through this to get some long-term success later on. And, they've gone through a bit. I remember when Mary took over as coach, he was going around to gyms in the St. George Cogra area and the Wollongong area trying to get stuff to build their gyms up. They couldn't meet what other clubs were doing. The privatisation of rugby league allowed other clubs to sort of, build centres of excellence and have awesome gyms and have partnerships with all these different sponsors that enable them to create a great performance centres that can build success and lure players to clubs. And the Dragons just didn't have that recently. And they're building this awesome site down at the University of Wollongong, like the centre of excellence, like every team sort of got now. But yeah, I'm sort of like, I'm not going to say that I accept the period that we've had. It's easy to do because I've come from the Illawarra side of things, where I mentioned that they only really made the finals once in their time in the premiership. But I feel that they've got the talent, they've got the young players there. I think they've got some veterans that will provide that experience for those young guys coming through. So I'm not so like maybe what the West Tigers fans have been going through. I think there is optimism. They had a pretty good run last year too. And if they can just clean up their stuff off the field and get serious about rugby league, and I'm sure they are, but it just from the outside looking in, it's like you're not at the tier 1 levels of other clubs, like your Penriths, like your Melbournes, like South Sydney. And that's where they need to be. And we've got such a good fan base. Like we've got two pockets. We've got, once they start playing well again, it'll just open up across the ditch, up in Queensland, in Sydney. Like the following will get there. The crowds will come back. And I feel that they're building towards a good style of footy now, because 5 years ago, it wasn't that good to watch.
I mean, that's the image of me. It's like St. George is just one of those kind of teams. It's like, but similar to Newcastle, kind of like that. They're kind of grinding, we're not overly entertaining, but you get the right players in there. And over the past sort of 3 or 4 weeks, the Dragons have really started to spin the ball. It's getting expansive. And I think I think Flano was a good call, because they needed someone who's strong enough to kind of push back to the board. And, you hear those nightmare stories about how Hook and that couldn't even pick their own players or whatever. And that's where we're lucky at the Warriors. Like, we went through that tough period during COVID, and there was a bit of negativity towards the owner and so forth. But it's one guy, and he flicked the switch, and him and Cam George put their plan into play, and they could turn it around really quickly, because it was really only two guys. Whereas when you've got a board that everyone's got their agendas and that kind of thing, that worries me about the Tigers and the Bulldogs and the Dragons there, because not one person's really in control.
Yep. And that's like, you look back at the Warriors last few years, going through Stephen Kearney, you had Stacey Jones as an interim, you had Sean Johnson leave, they went, okay, the future's probably now, we need to start thinking about that, move Sean along. You let players like Shans go to Canberra, because you've got a great talent pool, and that's what you can look at and go, you know what, we've got this homegrown talent that's great, but there's the realisation too that there's some good players around the league that can help you out, and you sort of see that in the signings that have occurred this year. Not only Andrew Webster, but you're bringing people like Mitch Barnett, Murata Niokore, Jackson Ford, Luke Metcalf, like these guys that have come in have just exceeded, I guess, expectations. And you've got Sean playing amazing footy. Shans has been awesome. Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, like that has been a great story. When he went to the Bulldogs, when he got loaned out, I think it was from Penrith to the Bulldogs, or he went early. I think he went early. It was like he had that season, and you were just like, man, this is disappointing. This guy was the Kiwis captain. Yeah. He was seen as a future leader. He was given that mantle. He was given an opportunity to lead, but then you see him at NRL level and you just go, well, we're not getting the best out of him, are we? We're not seeing the best out of Dallin. But like seeing him, he carved us up down at Wollongong, and You know what? It was great to see. I was like,
But the
man,
funny,
this is so disappointing, but how good is it? Like seeing that hair fly and diving over in the corner, like it's such a great story. And the whole team, like there's so many good stories. Tamari Martin coming back from
yeah.
retirement. Like you got Chanel Harris-Tavita coming back next year. You got Roger coming back next year. Like there's so much excitement. Look, I'm not even a Warriors fan. I'm excited talking
I
about
kind
it.
of feel like it. When I've listened to like SEN, the guys on SEN, I'll give them credit that a lot of them were the first guys to start to recognise what was different about the Warriors. And I feel like on Fox, it's still a little bit of lip service in some ways, but for us, for me, the first time I ever heard Andrew Webster speak, I was sold. I knew. I could just see when you look at leaders every day, you knew he was going to be the guy, but potentially didn't expect it to be this quickly. But it's a miracle I decided to do this year. Imagine trying to launch a Warriorholic last year during COVID and that nightmare into the season, man. No one would have watched. But, we can't help but get ahead of ourselves because we've never had that title, right? So we're always thinking we've hit the jackpot. And I genuinely feel like those tide risers, I love that term that Joel uses, that we brought in for so long. We've recruited guys who passed their best from a really good franchise that was successful because of what was around them. They turn up at our place and do bugger all, clip the ticket, and then just, we end up having to chop them and pay them out. But all of those guys have just lifted the level of the club. And you see the level SG Ball, and we're second in Cup this year, first year back. And then we get the Harold Matts and so forth next year. I feel like it's the beginning of a really strong period for the club, but I'm biased. How do you feel? Sort of you know the industry quite well. You've seen a lot of what's going on from the outside. Do you reckon it's a bit of a fluke this year, or do you reckon we're on the right track?
Look, initially you do think that, but I think when you look at the last few years, you look at this year, you look at the recruitment, like it all adds up, right? Like you can't just say, like you were mentioning when you first heard Webby talk, and you were like, oh, this guy's got it. But that's just one part of it, right? Like that's just one interview, one chat. That's how your mind went. You went to that straight, first impression, bang. But when you look over the course of weeks and months and you see what's happened and you see where they've come from the last few years, you've seen the players that have come and gone, the coaches that have come and gone. You've seen that adversity that they've had to go through, leaving family, leaving friends, leaving the country. You just go, you know what? This makes sense. Like it actually, it's not a fluke. It makes sense because they've put their asses out there to keep this league going. They've put their family relationships at stake to play rugby league, because it's not easy. And no, I haven't really heard any chats about how their relationships have gone. And I don't necessarily need to hear that. But I assume a lot of the guys had gone through some tough times, being in Tamworth, being in Gosford, being in Queensland. Like we were doing it here. Imagine if it was like the roles were reversed. Like there'd be so many people complaining and so much. Like you saw it in the AFL, like when they were all up in Queensland, like people were breaking rules. You saw it in the NRL as well. But the Warriors, like everyone that dealt with them, the people at the Crown Plaza in Gosford, all good things to say. They went through some tough times. They won some great games, but it didn't really translate into finals footy. But now I think you're reaping the benefits of everything that happened over the last 2-3 years, and on and off the field with COVID and not out of COVID. Like you can just see what's going on. And you know what? Like when it comes down to 80 minutes of football and a finals and all like putting it all on the line, like I'm sort of backing the Warriors, right? Because of what they've gone through and because of what it means and because of what it means to not only their rugby league career, but what their family and friends went through just to be in this moment, to be in this prelim, to be in this grand final. So we've seen them make 2 grand finals and the weight of the country be on them for those games. But I think they've had that. They've had that the last few years. When they get to the finals, I think you're going to see what you see is what you're going to get with the Warriors. So I think they're definitely a team to watch out for in the finals. And you can't just be like, oh, they're on this hot streak. they've built towards this moment.
I mean, like as a fan at the start of the season, I just like, I had these inklings hearing Webby talk, like I said, but I just wanted them to play with the heart and the passion that us fans, give them as supporters. And you could feel last year with some of those players who were only there because they were in Australia, and even the coach didn't want to come and live in New Zealand. And you felt that, and it pissed me off so much. And you could see it in a guy like Jazz or even Adam Fanua-Blake. They were like heartbroken out there playing with those wankers who didn't even want to be there. This year, you can just see the kinship amongst the team. Like when I managed to get up to Mount Smart a few weeks back for the Sharks game, just watching them interact with each other before the game. They're genuine mates. And compare that to the Sharks, when we played them and we did a number on them. The Sharks have got some really good players, but they don't seem to have that same brotherhood. They're not playing as a team, and that's what I've loved watching. A lot of guys give the Panthers shit for their over-exuberant celebrations. They're just mates who are stoked for each other because they've done what they've spent hours and hours and hours practicing. They're happy for each other, and I don't think it's arrogance. I just think it's genuine enjoyment that I love it. I mean, Jerome Luo might say the odd stupid thing, but I love the fact that him and his mates are out there playing footy and they've succeeded at the highest level. And I hope that that's what we can build at the Warriors without the potential going over the limit.
But you do get that vibe, right? Like that's what you see. Let's use the example of Tohu Harris, who has been banged up this whole season, but he puts himself out there because A, he wants to support his team, but B, like he sees probably something special in this team. He's had a wretched time since coming over from the Storm. Like we really haven't seen the Tohu Harris that we saw at the Storm.
Yeah.
But I think he sees what he's got around him. He sees all the players where they've come from, like Sean Johnson's injury history with what's he had? Hamstrings, Achilles, calves, like he's had all that. Fanua-Blake's had stuff off the field, but he's turned that all around. He seems like he's a leader at the club. Mitch Barnett, Murata Niokore, injuries, suspensions, a lot of different things. You see that, and that's where you're probably seeing this this team that just want to get around each other, and the morale. It's like we're talking about Dallin, you're talking about Shans, like both players that have been dropped from teams have been told. Like you see that last game with Shans with in reserve grade last year with Canberra. Like he was going home, but you can tell how passionate he was at playing at the Raiders and his rise there. And I saw that and I was like, you want that guy in your team, don't you? Like
I was, you could tell Reece Walsh was never going to stay, right? We were a stepping stone for him, and he did a job when we lost RTS and gave us a bit of hope. But even as well as he's developed into, I wouldn't give up Chance for him right now because of what Chance, what he brings to our club in terms of passion, leadership, his values. That's everything that I want the Warriors to be. Whereas I feel like, I've never met Reece Walsh, but it feels like it's a bit about him. Whereas like Chance is such a selfless, and I don't know how he does it, the miles he gets out of those legs. So I feel like having those guys there, and particularly like a lot of times in the past, you feel like we've recruited poorly in New Zealand where we get these kids who've really shone at high school because they're big and fast. And then they may shine through the 20s, but then you put them in first grade against guys that are just as big and just as fast. They don't have the mental strength. Whereas now we've got some very mentally strong guys there to mentor, and they're starting to seem to be recruiting, that kind of player on the mental attributes as much as the physical attributes, which is what really excites me because that's sustainable. And you get a guy like Roger coming back next year with his kind of work ethic and what he's going to bring as well. And you hear the reason he said, like, he decided to pick up the phone, what made him do it was watching our kick chase. How crazy is that? We're all sitting there looking at all these different things, and like people gave Rocco Berry shit for a long time about being useless, and it's his kick chase that's made us just phenomenal. And to see a guy of Roger's level see that and think, I want to be a part of that. That's what excites me,
Yeah, and you were mentioning the SEN boys getting around the Warriors from early days. Fletcher's been mentioning recently what he's loving about Wade Egan.
Yeah.
And you find that people that, you said RTS and I'm talking about Fletch, you see people that have played the game, that have had success, are seeing these individual performances that sort of tie in well for the team.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go off early, but you hear all this stuff and you just go, how can you not take that on board when you're sort of trying to predict top eights, top fours, grand
every
finals
year by now we will put the calculators away because we'd have been out. But Egan's a classic example, and what I've enjoyed about doing this Warriorholic thing is it's made me watch the game at a much more detailed level. And I was one of those dumbass fans who'll sit back and you don't know what they're meant to be doing out there, and you're critical of the things that you're comparing his running against Cook's running, and then his creativity against Harry Grant's. You've got the success vision of this guy that doesn't exist, but you don't understand the micro, skills within a game. Whereas a guy like Fletch might come across as a clown, but he knows his footy. When he starts talking footy, he's a smart guy. And I thought Egan was never going to be the guy to take us into a final. And you just see what he's doing now. It's like, man, it just makes you proud. It makes you feel like a dick for not recognising it. And Adam Pompey is another one, right? He gets so much shit from Warriors fans. He's tackling at 86% efficiency. He's come up against every centre in the game, and who's dominated him this year? I can't think of one.
Not off the top of your head.
So these are things that I've got to the point where you think, what do we need? And I'll ask you this question actually when I've said this is, if you're honest with yourself, what's that one or two positions we're still not right at the level we need to be, and maybe we don't have the depth within cup that you need to recruit. And when you try and think about that, you feel like you're being like you're cheating on your partner because you're thinking that way about these guys. Because I can put my hand on my heart and say I've not seen one Warrior in any of their jerseys, not just the first grade, who hasn't played with 100% commitment for 80 minutes for a whole season. So how can you think about, it must be so tough to think about that as coaches, but from your position, from a neutral who knows a bit about footy, is there any way you think, probably, going forward, if you guys want to be a genuine contender, you might need to beef up this area a little bit?
I was thinking that I like Sloan. I like Tyrell Sloan. But I feel we need a strong, big fullback. We've come from the Matt Duffy era of this small, tiny, quick fullback, but just gets dominated in tackles. And so I was sort of like, we need a sort of strong fullback there. The forward pack was getting a bit old, and then it sort of just dropped away. We lost a lot of forwards, but didn't really replenish that. There's so many different areas, and you look at for the Dragons, but you look at the Warriors and you go, man, there's not much. You sort of want to just sign depth. You want to roll with this squad. I think you want to bring probably people in that are just below what you've got at the moment to push your guys even better, even further. And you feel like that's been the case this year, where you've seen, even just with the Roger signing and seeing Adam and Rocco just go up to another level, because he's, probably going to be a centre. Yeah. You're probably not going to bounce Chance just because you've got Roger back, and you've got a pretty good wing. You've got some great wingers there too. So it's like...
it was interesting. You see, I was meant to say before, when you're talking about Dallin, what a great story that is. But when he got injured, we're all sort of going, oh no, Kossi, because we have that image of that game against the Storm. But that guy was outstanding. The level he took it to the point that, it was probably never realistic, but people saying, do we really bring Dallin in? How do you take this guy out? But it was fortuitous that his injury happened just at the time Dallin came back. And then now you think, how does Ed get back in there? But I probably, for me, I feel like we still probably need that the backup prop, that if we lost Dallin, I think that we could overcome pretty much anything, even SJ. I think if you put Volkman in there at halfback, he's a very good player. He's not overwhelmed. But if we took AFB out of our team right now, that go forward we lose is the biggest issue I think we'd suffer from. We've just been lucky. He's, touch wood, he's been injury free for 20 games this year.
Well, I think the thing is, like, with where Andrew Webster's come from too, you see with the Panthers when, well, let's just use an example, like Nathan Cleary's been out of the side the last 2 years. You've seen Sean O'Sullivan and Jack Cogger come in and do the job. Like, their win rate without Nathan Cleary is still so strong. So you want to have a team where it's like, it's not just SJ, it's not just Roger or your middles. Like, it's not just Adden and Tohu just ripping in. Like, you want to be able to replace someone. You want someone to be able to come in and, you know, in a salary cap era, you want someone in that's, you know, that's going to probably play 4 or 5 games a year to be relatively cheap, but come in and do a job and be effective. And you've sort of seen that with, I don't know what he's on, but Luke Metcalf's just come in and just been like, whoa, he's playing over.
Jackson
what
Ford,
he's.
Mate. Tell me Jackson Ford was probably on about 250.
Don't mention Jackson Ford, please. Come on.
But did you recognise his talent, mate?
I tried to avoid him in the signings chat.
Did you recognise his talent? You know, when he was
I liked him. Yeah, he's a Gerringong boy. So he's from the South Coast, played at Gerringong Lions with Ruben Garrick. My cousin actually went around with him too. And so I sort of seen a bit of talent down at the South Coast from time to time. And when I saw him coming through, there was big raps on him down there. There was big raps on him in the 20s. He didn't really get a go, didn't really get the opportunity because we had that aging pack as well. Like you had Tariq, Tyson Frizzell, Jack DeBellin. You had all these guys that were, you know, in that back row that sort of took his opportunities because he could play lock, he could play on an edge. You probably wouldn't play him up front being the build that he is young. He's a big boy, but you probably would have put him on an edge to start his career or bring him off, you know, to fill in at the back end of halves in the middle. But, yeah, it was... You know, I'm happy he's getting a good, solid run and showing his potential because then, like I was saying before, it's like maybe we should trust our young talent. Maybe we shouldn't just like throw them to the curb and let them go to the Warriors or let them go to the Eels. Like you want some of these guys. You want to know that your junior base and the competitions that you've got in Group 7 in the Wollongong area and in the St George area will be able to provide some players for reserve grade and then hopefully come through to, in under 20s and come through to NRL ranks so that when you're signing players, you can sort of fill the void of what your junior system's not providing or bring in veterans to compete.
I mean, that's what every year we've been excited by new signings, but this year it's literally only Roger and Harris DeVita. And you're thinking, if we could, but then you look at our cup side, and particularly in the back rowers, like I don't know how we fit them all in there. Halves, we've got Volkman, Metcalf, Tamati Martin, Harris DeVita, SJ. I hope we can keep all of them, but it's exciting. And then I don't know if you saw any of our SG ball team this year, but man, there's some crazy talent. Like there's a young hooker there, Fkufko, I think his name is. One of Fkufko or something like that. Mate, the guy, he literally goes through this gap, puts a chip over the top, regathers and just literally runs straight into their fullback, bowls him over, scores a try. It's like the physicality, the skills. You're thinking, man, and this guy's only about 17, 18. And having watched the All Blacks for so long, you guys will appreciate this. You know, Dan Carter leaves and you think, oh, you guys are screwed now. We've finally got you, Bowden Barrett. Michael Jones retires and then you've got Josh Cromford. We've just had this conveyor belt, but we've never had it in league. But I guess for the Kiwis now, how many Kiwi eligible players are playing over in Australia now because so many of our high school kids are getting recruited out. I think it's something like 50 or 60 kids a year out of our top 150, 200 kids are going to the NRL clubs now. So it's giving us that depth, which is kind of sad that you see that Auckland Rugby League have signed partnerships with Manly, I think it is, to be their development pathways, which is a bit of a an odd thing when you've got a team in Auckland there. But on that note, let's jump into the back into the real world, into the now, and we're into the round 24 there, so including this round, we've got 4 left. At the moment, we have the Panthers, Broncos, Warriors, Storm, Raiders, Sharks, Cowboys, and Knights in that order in the top 8. Interesting to see that a few of the top teams playing each other. Who do you sort of see as these guys are cemented, we're going to see them in the finals, and who are the teams that sort of may drift in or out there for you? We've got the Rabbitohs, Eels, Manly, I guess the Roosters, theoretically, if they won every game and results went for them, could potentially be there. Unfortunately,
I think the top... I was doing the math before I came on. 16 points, Knights are 27, 11, 4 games left. I think there's just a small chance we might make it. But I think looking at the ladder, you've got to say the top 4 are in. You've got to say the Panthers, the Broncos, the Warriors, the Storm, all in. The Raiders on 30 points with the Storm. I don't buy them at the moment. Like, I've watched them play. I've sort of been a bit pessimistic as to their success. Like, if you've won 4 more games than you've lost and you're minus 74, the biggest win was against the Dragons, which was 10 points, which was a close game. I just don't see them being a lock just yet. I want to see. I think the Rabbitohs are the team outside the top 8 that can make it. I think you've got probably Raiders, Sharks, Rabbitohs in terms of who will be fighting for that last spot in the top 8. It could well and truly come down to Rabbitohs, Roosters round 27. Fletcher's been banging on about that. And you've got Sharks Raiders as the last game of the regular season with the Eels on the bye. So it's going to be busy. The Knights are at the Dragons at Cogra, where we saw the Broncos lose the final game of the season to some sort of anomaly of a win from the Dragons. We're sort of that. I don't know, the real dark sort of, we can ruin someone's NRL season, let's do it.
I'd love you to do that to everyone except us. I mean, I agree on the Raiders, mate. Like, they can't score points out of anywhere else than kicks. And then that comes down to a 50-50, reasonable in defence. But looking at it, they struggled against the Tigers. And Costo was talking to Martin Devlin on the radio here yesterday, trying to claim that the Tigers are going to beat the Warriors on the weekend. I don't see how the Warriors, the Tigers match up to our forward pack. They've got some good X factor in the back, but the Raiders couldn't put them away, and I just don't see where their points come from when it really comes down to it. But they've just got enough points there now, and they've got the Bulldogs and the Sharks, which they could win. They could also lose. I'd like to see the Bulldogs sort of mess up a few people's parties as well, but because I've got the Raiders finishing up on 7th, just purely because of those 2 wins they may win. But I think if you look at the way that the Dragons are playing, I think they can mess up people's parties quite nicely. Manly can definitely mess up a few people's parties with how they went last night. It's hard. I wouldn't like to put your left one on who's going to get in there, but so what do you reckon? What's your final 8 there? If you had to,
I think you're right. I think the Bulldogs are the key. Like, they have got all their most of their players back now. They did have an interesting injury toll, pretty much from when Kickow did his pack. You had Luke Thompson's finally playing his first game of the season. You've got I think they've got optimism too. They've got some good players coming to the club next year. I think you see that with clubs that sort of, once they get their players back that might be out of contention, they start getting a bit of a second or third wind and just go, you know what, let's get some positives to lean into the next off-season. You know, we've got these players coming. We've got a full year, like an extra pre-season where Serraldo knows what he's got. I think the signings that have come, like Matty Burton, Reid Marnie, on the kick out. Yes, he will be massive. Like, you see what he did against Manly, like the ability just to sniff out a try, his ability to kick goals, just his knowledge of that Panthers system, having players like Burton and Kickow already there. Well. His defense, like he's a talent. Yeah. He clearly is a talent. He's done it at Origin. He's done it at international level. He's going to be a great signing.
Well, I think
what was that? Sorry,
I think he's the best centre in the game for me.
Yeah, wow.
I think
a
lot of people go, what doesn't he? I mean, who's better than him, really?
Yeah, he's definitely up there. You can make a great argument for him being the best centre in the NRL.
But I just look at the Bulldogs and I feel like they're trying to buy a premiership, which as a fan I would take. But I kind of like how we've built a little bit of a base with it, but we haven't bought it. We've just bought guys that are hard workers. We didn't go and buy these Origin stars and the like. And it would feel a little bit hollow. And I don't know where they're getting the money to do it and how they fit it all under the cap with these giving people bars or whatever. But
a lot of movement. I think you're right.
The other part about that is, like, and I think one of the things that's gone under the radar with the Warriors, and it pissed me off a bit through the middle of the year, is particularly through Origin, is the Warriors are coming up against depleted Broncos. We had 7 players out of that game, of our starting lineup. So we've got all these guys. You've got Jazz Tavanga, Dylan Walker, Mitch Barnett, potentially Tamati Martin, Luke Metcalf, who missed a huge part of the season via injury and suspension. So we didn't play Origin, so I don't think we're as fatigued as a lot of the teams will be. So the guys like the Bulldogs who are getting all these players back now, they're not fatigued. And they're coming up against the likes of the Broncos or whatever, who half of their team played Origin and haven't had a break. And likewise with the Dragons, they should be pretty fresh.
Yeah, I think you look at the next 4 rounds. I think the Rabbitohs come in. I think they'll do us. They'll go pretty close to knocking over the Knights. I still think they've got so much talent. They're playing, they're very much underachieving. Latrell's finally, he's only been back a couple of weeks. And that's what you've got to sort of account for. He's going to get 2 games against the Dragons and Knights, have a bye, and then they're going to be relatively fresh for a massive game against the Roosters.
Roosters game, that will be like a semi for them. Yeah, I think you're right. I've got them sneaking back in there as well. I've got the Sharks dropping out. I just don't think they're consistent enough at the moment. They're too much. Well, I think the changes they made over the past couple of weeks in the halves at fullback have kind of freed up Hines a little bit, but they were so focused, everything around him, like was kind of like us when we were SJ or RTS centric, and I just don't think they've got the consistency. So I've got them dropping out.
Yeah.
But shit, the Eels could win tonight and just mess everything up for me.
Exactly. Like, you're only going off what you've seen, right? You don't know what's going to play out of the next 4 weeks. I think it's going to be out of the Raiders and Sharks. So for me, that round 27 game is massive. I see the Rabbitohs pretty much getting 8 points out of their games. I see the Cowboys doing the same. I think the Panthers will probably rest a few players in that last game because I feel the Broncos might drop something somewhere.
Their last game against the Storm will be big as well. That's the only one I've got out of the top 4 dropping a game, is someone's got to drop that game. And that hopefully, I mean, if that puts a bit of a put of a dent in their pack before we play them, either at Suncorp or at Mount Smart there. So then take a step further into the future. Knowing that you're on a Warriors podcast, but don't feel any need to bite it. Who do you genuinely think will be in the final and who wins it?
Grand final, I think Panthers. If they get top two, which is most likely because they're 6 points clear of the Warriors. So, yeah, leading into this round. So you have to think that they're going to be top two, home final, Sydney prelim. They're through. I can't see them tripping up. They're just so well oiled. They've been there.
Not twice.
No injury concerns. Like it's just there's nothing. Even the Manly game, you saw a bit of adversity there. They still got through that second half. They did what they need to do. Yeah, Manly were trying some crazy shit. You know, they tried to do something like Seabold's come out and just gone, look, you can't get into an arm wrestle with them, so you're going to have to try stuff. It seems like there's this stranglehold over the other 16 teams that it's just like people are resigned to the fact that they're a great side and they're going to have to beat them by doing some wacky shit. And that just says enough, right? That they've got something special there. I think they get through. They're going to be in their fourth straight grand final. The second spot, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the Broncos can get through a prelim with this team. Yeah, a few of the guys have played Origins and been in big games, but you know, at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting when it's all on the line. It's 80 minutes to get into a grand final. You got teams like the Warriors and the Storm and potentially the Rabbitohs and the Cowboys to be that opponent. I can't put my left on the line and say, yeah, the Broncos are going to get through. If I was to pick a team, it's the Rabbitohs.
But the Storm as well, though, with Munster, if they get Pappenhausen back, you know, they've both got X Factor, the Broncos and the Storm, but the Storm's got the experience.
Yep, 100%. Like Rabbitohs, Storm, definitely. Like they're the teams that I'm like, if I'm Broncos, if I'm the Warriors, they're the ones I'm cautious about, and you sort of want to try and avoid to get into the grand final. But if you can play them and beat them, that's what you want going in to play the Panthers, right?
You'll think that I'm crazy of the top. What got the top four there, and if you put the Rabbitohs in there, I'd take the Panthers out of any of them. I think that we have the game to beat the Panthers because Webby knows them in and out. We played them at full strength, and they couldn't score against us until the last 20 minutes, and we had a couple of injuries. I think we match up against them better than we do against, because you've got the likes of Reece Walsh, Pappenhausen, Harry Grant, or Latrell. One of those guys could basically ruin our party. Whereas I think Nathan Cleary, he's maybe that guy, but Dylan Edwards is not going to cut you up in that kind of way. It's a team that's going to beat you, and I think we're a team that plays as a team. I don't know why I'd feel more confident, and I wouldn't care if I lost to them as much because I love the Panthers, mate. They're my second team. I just love the way that they've come from nowhere and built that success out of local talent, whereas I feel a lot of the other clubs up there have bought their talent. Yeah. So who are you saying? Who you reckon's going to be in there then?
I said Rabbitohs, but you've swung me. I'm going to say Panthers Storm.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that. I'm only saying that because I am on the Warriorholic podcast, and I know you're going to put a big case for the Warriors to be in there. But I'm just going to I think the Warriors could definitely do it. I don't see, I'm not like I said before, I was like, there's so much to like about what they've built this season. And the only thing for me is I'm probably picking a team that's been there with, the players that they've currently got.
Right.
And I think the Rabbitohs been there in the grand final. They've been in prelims for the last 5 years. The Storm, you've got the Bellamy factor. You've got this spine let's say it happens. You've got Pappenhausen, Hughes, Munster and Grant that have played together, that have, been that second era from the Smith-Slater-Cronk era. Like you got this Bellamy thing that's, it's But you've got some interesting stories. Like, I think the Warriors have something with all those three teams in the top four, with your Reece Walsh at the Broncos. You've got the Ivan Cleary at the Panthers. You've got the Storm rivalry, I guess, at Anzac Day.
Can't tell it here, Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean,
you got like there's some great storylines if the Warriors can get there. I'm really looking forward to the final series, even though my boys aren't there again.
And it's interesting, like, in every year up until now, I would have been so nervous because it would feel like it's a one-off, but I feel like this is almost a stepping stone, and they say you've got to lose one to win one. So, if we lost, we made it to the final, we lost to the Panthers, it wouldn't destroy me, because I feel next year we're going to be a better team. Everyone's staying other than Ciro, and we get Harris DeVita, RTS, and I think we could potentially recruit one more experienced forward. I don't know. So I'd get over it, but I fucking hate the Storm, mate. You talked about how you get over these things. Like, I can respect them, but I hate them so much. They're filthy, bloody dropping knees and elbows and dodgy tackles. I used to hate the Broncos. I hated them with a passion because they destroyed. When I used to be a Tigers fan, they destroyed us at times, and then they'd beat the Warriors. I've come to enjoy them. I like guys like Sal and Cobbo, like you're just out there smiling away, and I like Kevy, so I don't hate the Broncos anymore. And the Rabbitohs, I don't mind them either. I love Latrell. I love that he's just like this genuine guy. I just don't want to lose to the Storm, and I'd hate to lose to the Broncos, but if I had to lose to someone, it's Panthers, mate. I'd love to see that three-peat and put Ivan Cleary right up there in the top echelon. I mean, you'd have to consider him in the level of Wayne and Bellamy if you did three in a row, wouldn't you?
And that was the crazy thing. I remember there was articles being written before that first, they'd lost the year before to the Storm, and then before that first premiership, there was articles saying Ivan Cleary could become the most losingest coach in the NRL without a premiership. There was Brian Smith's currently got the mantle, and I'm like, are we seriously going down this path? Like, this guy got the Warriors to a grand final. He's got this, he was at the Panthers, went to the Tigers, came back. He's got this squad you could tell, right, when they played the Storm in that grand final that, that was a bonus if they won it, because they were building something special. And you just go, wow, what he's achieved. And I sort of look back on that moment, remember reading that article.
I remember.
And then I was like, you know what? Last year I was like, this is their third straight grand final year. It's Origin, all the players that have played Origin, it's going to be too much for them. They blitzed it. They still won. And now they're just showing that they're pretty much favourites, outright favourites for the premiership. Year 4 of grand final, sort of years with Origin, with the World Cup.
The players they've lost, and he's lost his 2 assistants, for him to deliver that, like I said, you've got to put him up there in the absolute top echelon of coaches. And again, people piss them off, but they just look to me like a bunch of guys who enjoy their footy, who've worked their ass off. So I hope if we don't, they do. I wouldn't begrudge them if they beat us, because I think we'll be back there next year. If not next year, thereafter, because it only gets better as long as we don't get another COVID. I'm excited. I've got my grand final ticket, just in case.
You do? Yes.
Oh, yeah, mate. I thought, well, I can find a way to fly there via Singapore or something if I have to, but if you can't get a ticket, you can't get a ticket. So I got myself a couple of tickets for me and a best mate who lives over in Japan, a Kiwi guy. We've had this outstanding sort of promise for the last 10 years. No matter where we are in the world, if the Warriors make the grand final, we've got to find a way to get there.
Got to get it.
I don't know how. I don't deal with tight games very well, to be honest, and that's why I kind of like watching at home, so I can push pause and walk away and reset. But no, mate. Like I said, I hope you guys, and similarly for the Tigers, for all of the fans, even with the Broncos, I know what it's like to be on the shit sandwich for so long. So I hope you do take that step forward next year, and Flano does his magic. It might take another year or so for the Tigers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They could be looking at a three-peat of the wrong sort. But yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure to have you on. For everyone, like I said, SEN's or the SEN app, you can download it for free there. you jump onto the watch now or listen now thing, and you get all the Australian shows. What time are you guys kicking off over there? It's 2.
So it's 3 p.m. Eastern Time Australian, which is 5 p.m.
Yep.
And we're actually on SENZ from 6 p.m. after Kirsten Beaver for an hour. So you get a bit of a taste, and then you can jump on the app if you want for the final hour at 7 o'clock New Zealand time.
So check it out, because a lot of people don't even realise SEN's back on, because they sort of drifted off the radio or whatever. But anyone who's listening, check them out. Great entertainment, and you'll get me on there every now and then, giving them a bit of shit and flying the Kiwi flag, keeping them honest. But it's been a pleasure to have you on, my man. I look forward to having a chat again at some stage, and hopefully it's this time next year we were both talking about us playing each other in the grand final.
Oh, the Jackson Ford Cup. Wouldn't that be great? Thank you very much for having me on, mate. It's an absolute pleasure. I love talking league. I love how passionate, we do media, but it's great seeing people like yourself just speaking from the heart, talking about footy, because that's what it is at the end of the day. We're all fans. That's why we do it. That's why we change jobs. That's why we devote so much time to sport. It gets us through the hard times. We love the good times. We hate the bad times when our team's going well, but we know that we can just turn a corner the next year. So, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Do it anytime, whenever you want me. Let me know, because it's been great chatting to you.
Keen as, mate. Keen as. All right. Thanks very much, everyone. Stick up there with the Warriors over the weekend there. I'll hopefully get this up before the Tigers game. Looking for a 40-point win there to get up the old points differential up there with the Broncos, just in case they have a couple of slips. Then we get the 2 home finals. Stay tuned. We'll be back again.
Up the wires.
Up the wires.